This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My mom and dad had me when they were really young. My mom was 17 and my dad was 19. For some reason, my mom doesn't like talking about him, so I never really found out exactly how they broke up. All I know is that they stayed together until I was 5 years old. Something really bad happened and then my mom kicked him out of the house. Like I said, I don't even know what happened. When I was 12 years old, he begged my mom to come back, and she let him live in the apartment we had. But he's pretty much a deadbeat. He didn't help my mom pay for the bills. He didn't even want to get a job. He even went as far as begging my mom to become a stripper. He said that she would make way more money than the job she had. She was a secretary at the time. When I was 15, he left our house again. I never got a bad feeling from him when he was living with us though. With a lot of hard work, my mom was able to put me through college. I graduated and I got a really good job. I bought my mom and me a house and we moved in together. Then COVID happened and I lost my job. A friend suggested I start OnlyFans and I decided to do it. I started making a lot more money than I ever thought I would. Some months I was making around $20,000. This one guy would send me $1,000 every single week in exchange for pictures. Part 2 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. So this one guy started sending me $1,000 every single week. In exchange, I would send him private photos. Everything was totally fine until he started asking me questions. He would ask me things like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite dessert? Because it's OnlyFans, I never really answered honestly. But then one day he told me, you love The Little Mermaid, don't you? And I was like, what? Because The Little Mermaid was my favorite movie as a kid. Watched it at least 3 times a week when I was a kid. First I thought it was a cousin playing a joke on me, so I decided to block them. The next day, I get another message. This one says, I remember how you used to love hot dogs. That's when I really myself, because my dad and I would make hot dogs every single Friday. It was our thing together. Like I said, he was a deadbeat, so he couldn't afford anything more than cheap hot dogs. And that's when he said, I have a confession. And before I could reply, he said, I'm your dad. I felt so disgusted. I blocked him and then blocked him from my cell phone too. That's when he sends me a long text message explaining why he signed up to my OnlyFans. He said that he was just trying to get to know me, that all he really wanted was to get me back as his daughter. Then why ask for nudes? Part 3 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. As soon as I read his long text message about why he signed up, I once again blocked him. 20 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. Yep, it's my father. Started knocking on the door so hard my neighbors came out. Called 911 and they came within a minute. I live in an area where there aren't too many people, so my house is really easy to find. Saw my dad walk to the backyard and try to get in through the back. That's when a cop stopped him and asked him what he was doing. Then he told the cop that I had invited him over. Then the cop comes to my door and asked me if I had invited him. I told him I didn't. Then I told the cop about OnlyFans. My dad was so ashamed he actually denied it. But of course I had all the receipts. Showed the cop my phone and the cop told him that he needed to leave me alone. He left my house and I didn't have the heart to tell my mom. But later that night I see another person sign up to my OnlyFans. Turns out it was my dad again. This time he was offering me $3,000 for more pictures. And he confessed that he couldn't help but love me as a woman because I didn't grow up with him. Excuse me, sir? You raised me for half of my childhood. Wanted to get a restraining order, but the judge says it's not that easy. So now I'm considering closing my OnlyFans. I don't think it's fair though. What should I do?
Okay, what's something embarrassing you've done to yourself while you've been out in public? I'll go first. So I just left the grocery store, right? And I get to the parking lot and there's this woman who's just backed her car into a parking spot and she's looking around and she's like looking at the back of her car and then she's looking around and then she looks at me and I look at her and I'm like, oh, maybe she's like backed into the car behind her. And then I'm like, I'm parked behind her. And sure enough, I walk up to my car and there's these big scratches all over the bonnet. So I look at this woman and I'm like, did you back into my car? And she's like, oh my gosh, no, I did not back into your car. And I'm like, well, how did these scratches get here then? And like, I was sassy. So I'm looking at these scratches and there's like red paint on them, right? And then I look at her car and it's like charcoal gray. So I look at her and I'm like, oh, okay, well, these weren't here when I parked here. Like, there's no way I would have not seen all these big scratches on the bonnet of my freaking car. So I like step back and I realize it's not my car. It's not even the same make or model. So I'm like, oh, this isn't my car. And this lady just looks at me, right? Like just looks at me. Oh, and did I mention the only thing I bought from the grocery store was 2 bags of chips. So I'm standing there with 2 bags of chips, like a feral, accusing this woman of hitting my car. That's not my car. And I look over and I'm literally parked next to this car. My car is parked next to this car, you guys. This woman just starts laughing at me, like laughing at me. So I'm like, I'm so dumb. Like, oh my God, please just pretend I was never here. So I turn around and I'm like, get me out of here. And sure enough, there's this hot doctor in scrubs, like looking like he just finished a 12-hour shift, here for the show, just bent over, laughing at me. Everyone's laughing at
So my friend was seeing this guy for 2 months. One night they have a date planned. She gets all ready and then she stops hearing from him. She's like, oh my God, he's ghosting me. So she calls him out on it. She's like, I can't believe you're doing this, like on the night of a date. He calls her. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't remember what his excuse was. He was either sleeping or he had work or like whatever. I think it was that he fell asleep. And he's like, no, I really, really like you. Let me make this up to you. I'm going to take you out on the best date of your life, like later this week or something. He calls me. Even I was bamboozled. I was like, okay, why would he say like, I'll do anything to make it? Yeah, I guess let him try. What? So the night of their new date comes. You remind you, prior to this, he's like, I'll plan something. I am making this up to you. No plans are made, whatever. She ends up making the reservation. Okay. She gets ready and now she's wondering like what train he's coming in on. Here are the texts. I'm not going to be on the 7:05. And she's like, okay, which one will you be on? And he's like, I'd say 8:05. And she's like, I made a res, I'll make a new one. So now she's changing her plans. Then he says, do you still want to do tonight or want to do tomorrow? And she's like, what? So she calls him, he doesn't pick up. And she goes, I still want to do tonight. I got ready. Can you call me? And he goes, yep, just got out of the shower. And that is the last she heard from him. And my friend was the victim of someone ghosting her, sure. But even worse, she was the victim of someone doing that weird thing where before they ghost you, they double down on telling you that they're not going to ghost you. And this has happened to me before too. Why are you telling me you're not ghosting me if that's just what you're doing? Do you think you're making yourself seem like less of an? Because ultimately, the longer you lead me on, the more you're going to seem like an. And men, if you do nothing else right, do not make me get ready just to ghost me. Do not make me think that you're about to make things up to me with the best date of my life and I'm getting ready just to go. Why are you building me up just to tear me down? Because if it's not bad enough that I'm getting ghosted, it's worse that I dressed up to get ghosted. To this guy, I say 20 big thumbs down, and I hope that one day, I hope that you get stood up at the altar. For real, like if you're gonna go, do you get what ghosting it? Like ghost, like ooh, like leave. Don't tell me that no, I'm actually not ghosting. Get ready for a date and then I'll bail.
I used to play in the woods a lot as a child, and one day my cousins came to visit, so my brothers and I took them into the woods. And then my cousin Ella was like, hey, I don't know how to get back to the house and I have to pee. Can somebody guide me back to the house? And we were like, no, don't go back to the house. Because that's how my brothers and I got people to play with us when we were little kids. We would lure them out to the woods. And then when they had to leave and they were lost, we would be like, you have to play with us forever now. Ella was like, I want to go back to the house. And we said, don't go back to the house. Just use the pea tree. And she was like, what? And we said, just use the pea tree right over there. My little brother said, oh yeah, whenever we have to pee in the woods, we just go pee on that tree over there. And Ella was like, but I'm a girl. I can't pee on a tree. And cousin Ashley was like, oh no, there's a really low-hanging branch for the girls to sit on. And she was like, Ashley, you've peed on the pea tree? Ashley said, yeah, we all have. And she stared at us all in disgust. And then finally, we peer pressured her into peeing on the pea tree. And she told us that she would only do it if we promised to keep it a huge secret and like not tell anyone until the day we died. But then we hit puberty and she made fun of my boobs. So, all bets are off on secret keeping.